You're watching Women of Strength TV with a purpose-driven woman who has a yearning deep in her soul to serve the world. Presented to you by Ange Wilcock, creator of Evolutionary Model of Well-Being, Mindfulness-Based Storytelling, and the Raw Woman Project, a businesswoman on a mission for every human on the earth to feel enough.
Welcome to another episode of Women of Strength TV and podcast. And today I've got another amazing guest, and I'd like to welcome Denise Yuen. Welcome, Denise.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Oh, it's great to have you too. Now I'm just going to read out to our listeners a little bit about you. So Denise is a spiritual teacher, student and empowerment coach who believes in wholehearted self-acceptance as the key to healing and transformation. She was born and raised in Hong Kong, and she left home at 12, and began a nomadic life of city hopping for the next 20 years. She lived in LA, Boston, Paris, London, and New York, and has always found it ironic how glamorous this resume sounds, as she knows intimately, just how lost and seeking she really was in her battle with depression during this time. 4 years ago, after moving to the great city of Toronto, she made the decision to stop running and began a steady and thorough process towards healing. After what she can only refer to as spiritual awakening, she began training as a coach and now works to empower clients out of limiting stories so that they can live a life in its most expansive realm of possibility. So on a spiritual retreat 8 months ago, a shaman said to Denise, "Express yourself." The simple statement struck a chord deep within her, and she realized just how much time we spend finding our voice and that it's high time we use them. With that, the seed of HerStories was born. Denise believes that there is an immense power in story, beauty and vulnerability, and that when we are able to truly own, love, and express ourselves, we transcend. Welcome, Denise. That's a beautiful bio, and it just really struck with me because that really aligns with my belief system too. And yeah, I can resonate with some of your journey in there as part of my own journey. And so my first question, as I always ask our guests, is when did your journey of Woman of Strength begin?
Oh, I think it started very, very young. I think that growing up, I think that strength for me at the very least was very much cultivated from a long, long journey of struggle. And I think that struggle started when I was very young. So there was a lot of bullying that was going on when I was a child in school. And there was something that I shared very openly recently at my speaker series, HerStories. I shared a story about how at home, my mom's form of discipline was corporal punishment. And that was something that really was a bit traumatizing for me and caused a lot of tension and conflict over many, many years for us, and was just recently healed in January. So I think that a couple of things from my childhood kind of launched me on this journey of struggle and personal suffering that I really had to take a lot of time and dig really deep within myself to find and overcome, and really come to the strength that I do feel that I have inside of me today. Of course, it's a never-ending process.
Yes.
But you know, it took some work, and it took some digging, and it took lots of introspection and willingness to kind of ask, you know, why things are happening, what lessons are there to be learned. And I think the moment you start embracing yourself, the dark and the light, the good and the bad, and all of your past and everything about you, and start to really know yourself and accept yourself, I think that's when you can really start seeing the positives and the strengths and who you really are inside and that power.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, like you said, it's a big journey and it's an ongoing journey. So you talked about it takes lots of work. What sort of work have you been doing, on yourself to come to the place that you're at today?
Yeah. So it started throughout my 20s. I had a very difficult decade of depression and anxiety. And so it started with a bit of therapy. That's kind of how it began. And so with that came a lot of introspection. And lots of things were dealt with, and it was a lot of talk therapy. So, and I started to learn the tools of working on that kind of thing on my own as well. So I would journal a lot. And then about 2 years ago, I noticed that a pattern that I thought I had given up, kind of had let go of, started resurfacing. And it got to a point, and it was to do with men. And it was just this kind of constantly feeling like I was abandoned, and this deep inferiority complex, and everybody leaving me all the time. And this kind of idea where I was like overreacting as well to rejection, to this very oversensitivity and this kind of thing. And I'm like, you know what, Denise, my head was telling me that's not reasonable. And my heart was like, there's work to do. Like, what's going on? Like, let's work on this. Let's fix this. Let's get over this already. Because if you don't work on it now, it's going to be something that's going to keep resurfacing for the rest of your life. And so that's when I started really, really looking inward, because, I think it was something that was preventing me from finding love, and not just from others, but a self-love.
Yes, yeah, and I love that. When you talked about, in the mind, you knew it was there, and intellectually you could understand it and make sense of it, because we can all make sense of our past at an intellectual level, but in your heart, you knew that it hadn't been healed. And it is so important, isn't it, to listen to our body and listen to our heart, because we're so consumed with the mind all the time and what goes on, and we can intellectualize stuff. But what happens is we then hold on to it rather in our body, and then that can create, disease and illness.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. Actually, what happened was a lot of things started surfacing in adrenal fatigue, in a lot of insomnia. I would say I struggled for about 5 years. And, what happened 2 years ago, was the catalyst of my awakening. But for a couple of years before that already, my body was really struggling.
Yeah. And it does, because when we push things down, the body is our other brain. I call it our fourth brain. We've got 3 brains. So we've got the thinking, feeling, and sensing brain, which is in our gut. But then we've got what I call the all-talking brain, and that's the body. Because when we ignore the other 3, the body goes, okay, I'm going to shout really, really, really loud at you now until you listen.
Absolutely.
And I think it's sad that we wait for that, because again, I was exactly the same as you. I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia and adrenal fatigue, and it, when we do this work, when we go on this journey and we're teaching others, we have to walk our talk, and we believe that we are, because we're consumed with it every single day. Because intellectually, I don't know about you, but I found myself intellectually going, but I'm fine. I'm not stressed. I'm okay. I'm not tired. And my body was giving me all these symptoms, until one day I went, okay, I'm going to listen. So how did you heal? So how did you heal from adrenal fatigue?
Oh, man. It was a long journey. Again, that kind of spiritual digging, that doing the inner work. And I had no idea what it was when I first started experiencing the adrenal fatigue. It was manifesting in a lot of headaches, lots of headaches and migraines and insomnia. And at the time, I was in New York, and I was going through a very, very difficult period in my life. I was going through a divorce, and it was my rock bottom. I was also struggling with eating disorders and an addiction to Adderall, which was probably a big culprit as well for my adrenal fatigue, because that's basically like speed.
Yeah.
Right. So, that doesn't help your body.
Yeah.
But I think it really it really hit rock bottom with all of the stress that was going on. And I was overstaying my status in the States, and I'm from Canadian. So I ended up leaving my life in the States, which I had lived in for 12 years, and leaving a disastrous relationship and coming to Canada. And that was kind of the first step towards my recovery, because I had to make some difficult decisions, but really for my own good, and really take some distance and perspective. I think sometimes when you're stuck in a difficult place, it's so easy to be short-sighted about it. And so I had to step back and be like, what really is best for me? You know, I was so grasping on so tightly to this relationship that wasn't good for me, and to this whole life that wasn't good for me, really unhealthy choices. And so I ended up moving to Toronto, which is where I live now. And that was the first step towards me really finding a little bit more stability, a bit of foundation, so that I could actually really start feeling like I could start building a life for myself. And so I was pursuing acting, and I still act here and there a little bit. And that was my dream. And so pursuing that was like a big step for me, because I was embracing what I really truly love to do. And as I was doing that on the side, I started coaching, because someone had coached me when I was in New York, and that had set the stage for me to end up pursuing acting wholeheartedly. And I was very grateful to this woman, and I emailed her. I was working at a restaurant on the side at the time, and I wanted to quit my restaurant job. So I emailed her and said, how do I do what you do? Because it helped me so much. And so that began my journey of being a coach. And with doing that work of learning how to become a coach, you apply so many of those tools onto yourself.
Yeah.
So I started doing a lot of work on my own. And I will say that, like, one thing I do really, really love, I talked about this earlier, journaling has really helped me. Journaling and meditating. So I now have a process of whatever it is that's going on inside of me. I sit down, I journal, it's very cathartic. Whatever it is that needs to come out, I dump out. And then I start, you get rid of the noise, and then you start journaling about your intentions and why it is that you are either struggling or what it is that you are hoping to achieve. And when you get to clarity on that, what I do is then I sit down in front of my altar, and I ask for the things that I want. I express my intentions. I pray, if you will, just to the universe, just to spirit, very non-denominationally. And then I meditate to listen. And whatever it is that my intuition tells me, I sit down and I write everything down.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful process, isn't it? I do the same. And I also do that whole, what I'm grateful for too, because gratitude is really the key to everything, isn't it? Because if we know what we're grateful for moment by moment, there's nothing in life that we can't do or become. So, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
So one of the things that I heard you say was around, stepping away from the things that no longer serve you. And that's really hard to do, isn't it? Stepping away from a relationship that doesn't, no longer serves you, living the life that you're living, and it's not supporting who you want to become. What's the steps, if women that are listening to this, what are some of the steps that you had to take, to step into that place of courage to be able to walk away from what no longer serves you?
I think that, that process that I was talking about of journaling and meditating, everybody's got their own version of that. Everybody's got their own version of meditation, whether it's going for a run or going for a swim. It can be really anything. But being in that zone where you, with the intention of finding clarity and blocking out the noise, I think deep down, your wisdom inside, you always know what the truth is, what is best for you. Yes. Deep down, you always yes. know, right? Like whenever we're stuck in these not good situations for us, there is a voice that always tells us what is good for us. Yeah. But we get so caught up in the head and the ego, right? And the fear of and you want, you want to hang on to all these things that are just right in front of you. And it's so hard to step back and see the bigger picture of what actually is good for you. But you always know. So
Yeah.
I think being able to hone in on that deeper truth, on like the inner wisdom, that voice, we all have it. So it's about taking the time and really carving that out, and not, or maybe, and also another thing that I do is whatever it is that we're that's my cat. Whatever it is that, is preventing you, whatever story it is that you're telling yourself.
Yeah.
That I can't leave this relationship because I don't know what it is. For me, it was like, I'm never going to find anyone else.
Yeah.
This is the best I'm going to have it, that kind of thing. Whatever story that is, I will challenge that story a lot. I'll sit down and in my journaling or meditating, I'll challenge that story and I'll ask myself why I feel that way and whether that's the truth, and usually it traces down to some old story that I used to hang on to, or that I've hung on to all of my life due to something that's happened in my childhood, or some traumatizing experience that's made me wear that story as a protective armor that maybe no longer serves us, So when you come to that, sometimes I come to that light as well, where I'm like, that's what it is. And I can now let it go.
Yeah. And that's great, because when we do journal, what we step into, when we start writing, it's very much from our head, isn't it? It's very much what we know intellectually. And then we really get into it, the creativity comes out, and then that's our true self that we're actually expressing and writing about. And I love that. I love, because we actually do connect to our truth when we're writing, because people go, but I'm not creative. And it's like, words are creative. If you can step away from the mind and step into the heart, even if it takes you 5-10 minutes, because it's all still up here, and then you just get into the groove, into the flow, you are speaking your truth, and your truth speaks really, really loud and clear to you. So I love that. I love that you do that.
Yeah.
So tell us about your business. So we know how you got into coaching, and that's a great story. And lots of coaches that I speak to, it's very much been their experience too. They go and have a coaching session and see the power of coaching, and then it's like, wow, I want to do this. I want to be able to share my gifts with the world. So tell us how you developed your business.
So it began with, it says briefly in my bio about how I was on a spiritual retreat and a shaman said to me, express yourself.
Yeah.
And I had realized that, from all the years of depression and anxiety when I was living in the States, and, really feeling quite sorry for myself and being in a very dark place, there was so much self-rejection that was going on inside that all I wanted to do was hide. And that, it came kind of hand in hand with the depression, but really wanting to just like stay in bed and do nothing and not be seen. I was just so afraid of rejection, and I wanted connection so badly, but I was afraid of being rejected if I put myself out there.
Yeah.
And so I would hide, and I would not express myself, and I would hide all the time. And this shaman had said, express yourself. And I remember at the time, now it's like, I just want to express myself all the time. It's such a liberating feeling. And at the time I was thinking about like, what does she mean by express yourself? Like, and it kind of hit me that, that I hide, and that there are a lot, that I'm a highly creative person and I don't do anything creative for myself, or I didn't at the time. And it really sparked this desire to speak, and to speak my truth, and not be afraid of, my vulnerability, or like what's deep down inside that I think I had a lot of shame around. Some of the stories that I've told you about the depression, and about the men, and about, my addictions and eating disorders and all of these things, I was so ashamed, so I would hide. And so I just suddenly had this awakening of sorts, where I wanted everyone to use their voices. I wanted everyone to start stepping out and not be afraid of speaking their truth and being themselves and being authentically seen. And so I started a speaker series, and it's a speaker series and story sharing platform, and it's called HerStories. And it's at herstoriesspeak.com. But it's it's a quarterly series where we put on these events where we have guest speakers share their stories. And really it's about tapping into our vulnerable stories, our stories of struggle as well as strength, and owning those stories. So really sharing from a deep place of what we've struggled through and how we've overcome. And so we have guest speakers. We usually choose speakers that we feel will be great storytellers and really have great stories of struggle that they're not afraid to share. And then we open up the second half of each event to the audience. And we do a little bit of journaling. We use some coaching tools where people get to be introspective and they get inspired by the stories that they've heard as well in the first half. And then everyone starts to speak and they are given a microphone, they stand up on the stage and they share their truths as well. So every event we have a different theme. So the very first one was Step Into Your Power, and that was really about owning your vulnerability. And the second one was called In Service to Our Mothers, because it was Mother's Day. And it was about sharing our stories about our mothers. And that one had a lot more of a gratitude aspect to it. But also, even if you had a difficult story with your mother, really, like I had a really difficult story. So I shared a story about forgiveness and how we came to heal together. But at the end of the day, HerStories is a spiritual series. And so every event we like to revolve it around something that's like gratitude or forgiveness or connection or transformation. The next one is called The Realities We Create, and it's in September. And it's about how we transform our stories of struggle into our stories of strength.
Yeah. I was going to say that when you were talking about struggle before, because it is that struggle that we experience that does make us strong women, or strong human beings, when we can actually connect to our stories and connect all the dots. And I love what you said, the one connecting with your mothers. And because again, mine was a struggle, my story with my mum. And what I offer my mum is gratitude. I feel very, very grateful, because if I hadn't have had the struggles that I had growing up, I wouldn't be the strong woman that I am today. And so I'm truly grateful, for those experiences. And I think when we can look back on our past and feel gratitude towards our experiences, however horrendous they may be, because there's so much learning in them. And I think I'd rather be in a place of gratitude than a place of resentment or anger, because we know gratitude is a place for love, resentment and anger is a place for eating away at ourselves. So, it's quite beautiful. I love what you do. It's amazing.
Thank you.
And so these HerStories, they're in-person events?
They're in person. So they're quarterly. They're based in Toronto. And it really is just a great place for people to gather and inspire and be inspired by the stories of others. I really think that sharing stories is such an important way to connect with each other. In the modern life these days of social media and everybody kind of getting this illusion of connection through social media, I think it's really important for us to physically gather and share stories with each other, because at the end of the day, really we all are one, and our stories are all interwoven, and there is universal truth in everyone's story that we can all resonate with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I found through doing, Woman of Strength. It's very much, there's a thread through every woman that I've spoken to where our stories connect.
Exactly.
And it's quite amazing. So Woman of Strength is very much a little bit like what you're doing. Yours is in person. Woman of Strength is online, but it's helping because we know that stories are so, so powerful. And so when other women listen to our stories and connect with it, it gives them strength, it gives them hope, it gives them courage to be able to step into that feminine power, that feminine wisdom that's really burning inside of them. And
totally.
So I totally get it. I love I love what you do. It's beautiful.
Thank you. I love what you do. I think it's so important to have a platform for people to share.
Incredible. It is incredible. And it's, I don't know about you, but it doesn't feel like it is a purpose. It's not a job. It's not work. It's something that's very, very purpose driven. It's, for me, it's like, this is what I'm on this earth to do, and whatever that shows up, like, then this is what it looks like. And
totally.
It's very much about, well, Woman of Strength is just showing up as you are. We were born amazing, and we're still amazing. And if we strive for perfection, we'll never get there. So let's have imperfect action with all the errors that come with it, because
absolutely,
that's who we are.
Yes.
So if our beautiful ladies would like to get in touch with you or connect with you, how can they do that?
So for HerStories, the HerStories website is herstoriesspeak.com. And we will be posting all of our stories from our guest speakers online as well. So that way you can access their stories.
Oh, great.
We are starting a podcast next year in January. We're very excited about that. You can reach me directly through the website, herstoriesspeak.com. And there will be a contact section where you can find an email address where you can reach me directly.
Fantastic. Now, before we say goodbye, I always ask my guests for just one little gem. If there's one little gem that you can leave our ladies in terms of stepping into their power or connecting to that inner wisdom, what would it be? I know you'll have many, and it's hard to pick one.
One piece of wisdom. I think that what's really important is, I'm just going to say two things, is to trust yourself. Because whatever it is that you're going through, I work with a lot of people who struggle a lot with the darkness and feeling like they are so stuck in it and feeling like it's never going to end, that this is their life and nothing's going to change. Yeah. And I would say to really trust that it is temporary. And the other thing is to reach out, to connect with others, and really know that whatever it is that you're going through, you're not alone. So, share. And taking action is a great way of stepping into your power, and connecting with other people is a great way of seeing the truth of others reflected in you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And I think my little dog Molly agrees with us too, because she was barking in the background.
So cute.
So thank you so much, Denise. It's been wonderful just having this great conversation with you. And I wish you all the best for your future.
You too. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Remain real, authentic, and whole. Be yourself and continue to follow your dreams. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time on Woman of Strength TV.